Hello. My name is Courtney, otherwise known as Courtney.Speech online. I am a certified speech language pathologist here to help you help your child learn to talk, or a client that you're working with. No matter who it is to you, they're important, and we're going to teach them language together. Come on, let's do it. I have a few things that I want to talk to you about today, and they're all quite important. And honestly, you as a parent or another professional, no matter who you are, you can make a huge impact on how a child learns. Want to know how? Well, there's actually a lot of studies and research out there that supports that a parent or another individual or a caregiver can also help a child learn language in the same way that a speech language pathologist can do. All that you need to know is what I'm about to teach you, plus a little bit more, but we're going to get you started today. So, all in all, you have the power. You have so much right at your fingertips. You just need to learn from me and practice what I'm about to preach to you, and you can do it. Your child can learn a lot of language. Keep in mind that, of course, there are other different barriers that could come into play. And if your child does not respond to some of these things within, let's say, a couple weeks or a couple months, then I would definitely, if you were not already concerned, I would start looking into speech language pathology, look into getting a speech language pathologist to work with your child and get them evaluated. It is never too early to evaluate them, it is never too late to evaluate them, and it is so important that you get them the support that they need. The earlier, the better, especially because if they are between the years of 0 and 3, we know that a child's brain is 80% developed by the time they turn 4 years old. 4 years old. Can you believe that? That means that also it goes to show that the amount of neuroplasticity or brain ability to adapt and learn and grow at such a young age is so important. They have the most neuroplasticity from the ages of 0 to 3 in particular. And that is why early intervention is so important. That is why if you live in the United States, they prioritize it. They have different programs in every single state that supports this. And in most states, you can get into it for absolutely free. And in every state, you can get, at least as of now, you can get into it for every state for an evaluation for free. Keep in mind that a lot of these services are based on wait lists, and some of the states have very short wait lists, some of the states have very long wait lists. But either way, it's important. If you do not live in the States, unfortunately, I cannot speak to what programs your country has to offer, but I would hope that it's something because it is such an important time in development. If you are at all concerned for your child's language abilities or lack thereof, you can get into early intervention in most states, if not all, without a doctor's referral. You do not need your pediatrician to tell you that your child needs speech therapy or occupational therapy or PT. Most states also, I think, if not all, also do developmental interventionists, which are kind of a catch-all. They do a lot of just general development support, and like I said, OT and PT and speech as well. So there's so much there for you right at your fingertips. It's crazy not to take advantage of it, and it's never a bad thing to get them assessed. Some pediatricians will say, "Oh, just wait and see," but I would highly encourage you not to do that. There are so many SLPs out there in the world that hate that saying and hate that doctors are still saying it because of how important that time in early intervention is and how important 0 to 3 years old is. And a lot of doctors will have patients wait until 2 or 3 years old, and that's just not great. One other note to keep in mind is that milestones that you will see online or wherever, if it is a direct milestone, it is 10th percentile, which means 90% of kids have higher skill levels than that skill. And so if your child is only meeting those milestones, that means they most likely would still qualify for speech language therapy and are delayed. Or behind at the very least. And so those things are things to keep in mind. If you follow me, watch some of my TikTok videos or my videos on whatever platform you follow me on, it is important to note that a lot of the information that I put out there is based on averages, because I think it's more important that you know the average of where children are than where the 10th percentile is. Okay, with that, let's get on into it. That's my little spiel. I do want to talk about a few more things before we get into a couple tips, but this is going to be a big lots of information packed into this video just for you. So let's keep going. So, a couple other things that I think you need to know. What is a delay versus a disorder? Essentially, in layman's terms, I'm going to wrap this up pretty quick, but essentially, a speech or language delay is really just a way of labeling that a child is behind before we realize that it is chronic, or before it, just in case they do spontaneously recover. There is a lot of information in the research that says that a lot of children can spontaneously recover, some of which without speech therapy services. That being said, I would encourage you to still seek it out if you have any concerns, just because we know that with the help of a speech language pathologist, children can have a much greater impact or we can have a much greater impact in their development, and they have a higher likelihood of recovering, let's say, from this speech or language delay. That to be said, when it is more chronic, when it does extend past a couple years old, then we consider it a speech or language disorder. This is not something to be incredibly concerned about. Some disorders kids can still recover from or age out of, essentially, depending on where they're at, how much therapy they receive, and how they do over time. So there's a lot of ebbs and flows to this, and every single child is different, but just something to keep in mind. On that note, there's a difference between speech and language. Speech is the output of what you hear, it is the sounds coming out of my mouth right now. Language and how you create those sounds. Language is how you understand and express vocabulary, essentially, or different words that you hear and understand. So, language is more based in the understanding of vocabulary, the understanding of following directions, the understanding of concepts, and also the output of those things. Grammar, essentially, everything that is not how it sounds, most all of it is enveloped within the bubble of language. So, a child can be receptively behind or receptively delayed or disordered, and they can also be expressively behind, delayed, or disordered, or they can be a mixture of the two. So if it is not articulation, phonology, how they are making sounds, then it could potentially be their language, in that they're receptively delayed, expressively delayed, or disordered, as we've talked about, or that they are a mixed version of the two. Most likely, children are typically either expressively delayed, their expressive language is delayed, or disordered, or they're have a mixed delay. This can be caused by a various amount of things, some of which can be idiopathic in that we do not understand and do not have direct causation for why those things may happen. It is to be noted that if a child's family has a history of any of these things, they are more likely to present with these delays or disorders, though it does not mean that it will happen. I want to make it very, very clear that if you are a parent, or if you are feeling any guilt, please take that all off your shoulders and leave it at the door right now. Right now, do it, take it off, leave it at the door, because it's not your fault. Your child's language development and speech development has really not much to do with you. You can have a huge impact and you can support them, but you did not cause it, and it is not your fault that your child is behind or delayed or whatever. Let that sink in before we can move on, okay? It's not your fault, I promise. And there's so many things you can do, and one of them is being here today. And for that reason, I'm so proud of you. Okay, so when your child is evaluated by a speech language pathologist, they may or may not be diagnosed with one of those things. They also may have other things going on. There's many reasons as to why kids can present with certain disorders or delays. Just a few things to keep in mind. Something to start off with that I want to say pretty quickly is that sign language and AAC can really support a child with their language and with their language growth, and actually support their speech output as well. How? Well, let me explain AAC first. AAC stands for Augmentative and Alternative Communication. This is, oh my gosh, this cloud envelops so many things. Your gestures, your facial expressions. Huh? All AAC. augmentative or alternative communication. I am communicating. If I am throwing my brows at you, I'm communicating something to you, that I am angry, that I'm frustrated, that I'm bored, whatever it may be. I'm communicating something. By gesturing and pointing to things, I'm communicating something. So before we even work on necessarily a child's output or what they're saying, there's a lot of things that we work on that do not involve speech. And they have to have some of these skills before they start talking, some of which are purely just the understanding. If a child does not understand what a dog is, they're definitely not going to be out there pointing to dogs and labeling them and telling me it's a dog, because they don't understand that this thing that you're showing them in a picture is a dog. So they're not going to say it, of course, right? AAC is also can be considered a device or a something that a child can talk with without using their speech or their mouth to talk. This typically looks like something like an iPad that has speech output. Here, let me show you mine. Okay, this is just one fine example of an AAC device. There are many, 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 many programs out there, but this guy will get us started off. This is called Lamp Words for Life. It is one of the many programs that are available that you can purchase. I would not necessarily recommend that you do this without the support of a speech language pathologist, though I would argue that it probably would not hinder your child. This is, lamp is a little bit specific and I'm not going to get into it, but essentially if I tap on different buttons,
on, to, no, like,
I can say different things. So this is used to help a child communicate, or any individual communicate, if they do not have the ability to do so with their mouth. This is also a supportive device in that some that do talk that have trouble talking in certain situations, or just generally communicating is difficult for them, this can also be really, really supportive for them. AAC can also look like just simple pictures. If I draw a yes and a no on a piece of paper, yes and no, there it is. And I point to yes and I point to no to answer questions, that is AAC. Using pictures of any kind are also considered AAC. Sign language is also considered AAC, which I also noted before. Baby sign, ASL works too, but generally I use baby sign because I am not kept up with ASL, and ASL is a complete language that has grammar and complexities that can get difficult, especially for children, and it is not something that I am trained in. But I do use baby sign, and a lot of the signs are very similar, if not the exact same signs as ASL. This is something that I use supportively with arguably all of my clients, no matter their age, unless they are way above that communication level. Some basic signs that I use that you can use at home to help your child communicate are more, all done, no, no, yes, yes. Some other ones is dad or mom. Somebody told me mom wears lipstick and dad wears a baseball cap. Grandma is 2 and grandpa is 2. Great grandparents is 3. If you want to keep going, you get the gist. A few others: milk, like you're milking an udder. Milk, drink, literally like you're drinking. Eat, eat. Some others that I use, let's think. Stop, stop. Go, go. Sometimes I will use one hand, go. It doesn't have to be 2. I'm just showing you more than once. Go. Up, literally pointing up, and down, pointing down. All of these are, as I said, not directly ASL, but they are baby sign that I use within my sessions to help support children's language. If you use baby sign or specifically ASL, it is not going to hinder your child's language, it will support it. And you can start doing this literally when they come out of the womb, just as if you were to talk, you're talking to your child while they're in the womb. They can't see your hands, you can sign to them, but they can't see it. But as soon as they leave exposure to that language, is perfect as soon as you can. It's not going to hinder them. Are they going to imitate your signs at a couple weeks old? Probably not. But they do start with some imitation skills, and that looks like them imitating your cooing. I don't know if you've ever watched a video of a child imitating, like, mom or dad said, I love you, and the baby, ah, like their cooing sounded similar to that intonation. Children can imitate at a very young age. Not all do, and it's not expected, but it's something to keep in mind. One last note about AAC that I really want you to know is that it's never too late and it's never too early to expose your child to an AAC device like the one that I have or something entirely different. There's different levels to it. There's a lot of different ways to accommodate it to what your child needs. So, if you are at all interested or you think it would benefit your child, and arguably it would benefit most children at a young age, is that getting and talking to your SLP about it as soon as possible is really important, because sometimes, especially with insurance, it can take a while to receive and to get and to go through the whole program. But if you're interested, just a little note for you. On that note, let's get into the 5 tips that I have for you today, and we'll keep going. Okay, so I have 5 tips for you today. And some of these, I think actually all of them are on the parent handout that I give, because these are the biggest and, in my opinion, most important tips for parents in how to facilitate and support language in their child. Number 1 is modeling. Modeling. You model exactly what you want to hear from your child. I want you to be talking like your child throughout the day, but how you want them to talk. If they talk in baby talk, I don't want you to talk back. Bah, 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 bah. I want you to respond like they're talking to you in words. And I want you to expose them to language as much as you can. There is research out there that supports that children who are exposed to more language and more talking around them at a young age do develop language a little bit not easier, but they do develop stronger language abilities, and they oftentimes develop a higher level vocabulary than other children who hear less words growing up. So this is why things like socioeconomic status can impact the way that a child develops and how their vocabulary develops, or how high of a level of a vocabulary they have. Because if all parents are working nonstop, then your child's automatically going to be exposed to most likely less words and less hearing less language throughout their day. And that's not the end of the world. It doesn't mean that your child is doomed. You are here to learn. That in itself says a lot. But it is just some food for thought for you. Okay, so back to the scheduled programming. Modeling is so, so important. I need you to model things to say throughout the day. Anything that your child experiences, pretend that you are in their body and say what you wish that they would say. So if the ball goes down the hill and your child is still not saying words, you can say, go, go, ball. That's hugely important. Hugely important. If your child makes errors in their speech or language, they don't say their R's right, or they don't say their L's right, or they don't say the word all of the with the correct grammar, or they don't say 2-word sentences and they only say one, you correct them by modeling what you want to see, not correcting exactly what they're saying. So you're not coming up to them and saying, no, 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 that's not right, do this, or try again, try again, try again. You're actually just modeling what you want to hear. Okay, so that brings me into number 2, which is do not correct them. I don't want you telling them, no, 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 try again, that wasn't correct, do this, do that. Don't respond well to that, specifically younger children. But even, would you like it if I came up to you, hey, no, no, that's not right, try it again. No, no, that's not right. It piss you off pretty quickly. It's gonna bother your kid too. We need you to stop doing that as soon as possible, please. And instead, I want you to respond with a model of what you wanted to hear. So if your child says, the dog goed, you instead would say, oh yeah, the dog went. He went outside. The dog goed outside. He went outside. You're right. He went. So I'm overemphasizing the went, and I'm not getting on them or telling them that they're wrong. I'm still keeping it positive. I even told him he was right, or she, or whatever. Doesn't matter. You kind of get the gist. If your child is saying Willie or they're saying W sounds for their R's, that's a common error that we see in articulation. Then instead of saying, no, no, try it again. No, that's not right. Try it again. You can say it. You've said it before. You can do it. I don't care if your child said it before. If they're not doing it, they can't do it. If they're not doing it, they can't do it. And we have to figure out why and why they're not at that level yet. And sometimes it's because they're emerging in that skill. They do not have it yet mastered. And that's okay. That's a part of the learning process. But your child is not behaviorally being stubborn in that they just don't want to talk, or they just would rather grunt, or they just would rather, it goes with food too. They're being picky. They don't want to eat anything. There is anything that is behavioral that you think may be behavioral regarding those two things is not. Your child has something is blocking them from being able to do the thing that you want them to do. And sometimes it can be medical. So it's not something to mess around with, and it's definitely not something to give them a lot of grief for, because you're only going to make it worse. They're only going to get more and more frustrated and more stubborn with you. Again, food for thought. Number 3, technically, but still technically, well, technically it's still number 2. I want you to slow your speech down. So many parents, and myself included, I'm not a parent, but so myself included, when I was learning, I talked way too fast. So fast. If you are talking to your child at the same rate of speech that I am talking to you right now, too fast. You need to slow it down. Your child needs to hear less language and quit and slower. I know that that is controversing what I said earlier, and that the more words they're exposed to, the better their language and vocabulary is. But when you want them to repeat you or imitate you, I don't want to hear you saying 8-word sentences. I want to hear you saying one word more than they can say. So if your child can say nothing, you should be saying one word to them. If your child can say 2 words, you should be saying 3-word phrases to them. Get the gist? If your child is autistic, or you have a feeling that they might be autistic, or they present with a lot of echolalia, which is imitation, essentially, imitating your words, or if they present with using scripts that are filled with a lot of intonation, blah, 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 and they do this often and they're repetitive, that was one that was not understandable in as far as words go. But there are a lot of like, oh no, she's falling, is one that one of my kids used to say all the time. And they use it in different settings, and you're not sure what they're talking about, or they're repeating a movie quote oftentimes, or a video quote. That is a sign of gestalt language processing, and this is something that we would target differently, because those children learn language in chunks and in phrases, and would not necessarily adhere to this plus 1 word rule in the sense that I'm teaching it to you right now. If you want to know more about gestalt language processing, I will have a series either posted or coming soon, so make sure you go and check that out if you need more information there. Okay, so we talked about modeling, we talked about not correcting your child, and we talked about slowing down, which you could say is 2 or 3 tips right there, but I'm going to give you 1, 2, 3 more. Okay, so number 4, we'll say, is narrating what you say throughout the day or what is going on. What this looks like is, if I'm going into the kitchen to make a sandwich and my child is with me, I'm going to say, "Ooh, I feel hungry. Hmm, mommy hungry. Hmm, what should I eat? Hmm, I want a sandwich. Let's go walk, walk, walk to the kitchen. I need bread. Get the bread. Take the bread out. Ooh, I want ham. Go get the ham. Open the fridge. Open. You get the gist. You are literally coming on a TV show of children with me to talk about every little thing that you're doing and making it sound entertaining like you're narrating a story. Hence, narration. You are narrating what's going on throughout the day. I had one parent tell me they call this the sportscaster in their house, and I love it because that's exactly what it is. You are a sportscaster of your own life. But this also can be done in terms of your child's point of view. So if your child is playing, and this is a really good thing that you can do, is just while they're playing, you just start talking about what they're doing. Oh, Gabby has the ball. She threw it up. Oh, it fell down. Ball down. She's running to get it. Run, run, run. She picked it up. She got it. So I'm talking in third person, but you can also talk in second person, and that you just use you. Oh, you got it. You got the ball. Yay. For children who struggle with pronouns, sometimes I talk in first person. I talk from their perspective. So even if I'm not the one playing and little Gabby is playing, I'm talking like I'm her. I have the ball. Purple ball. Throw the ball. I threw it. I'm giving the examples to her from my point of view. Some people may argue that teaches the wrong perspective, or this, that, or the other. But honestly, if a child is that young, it's not going to impede their language if they're not using language at that time or speaking much at all or understanding to that level. It's not going to hinder them. It actually can, from my experience, be helpful for children who use a lot of echolalia or are autistic. For me, that has worked pretty well with establishing and teaching them more language, because when they repeat they repeat me, but it turns out to be correct for them. So take that with what you will. But narrating is great. It's the perfect thing to do when you don't know what else to say, and a perfect thing to do during the downtime. It doesn't have to be nonstop. Just every now and then, if you're watching TV and the child is playing over in the corner, oh, Tabby has the ball. Big ball. Oh, she threw the ball. Go back to watching your TV. Go back in a couple minutes later, make another comment or two. Something is better than nothing, people. Something is better than nothing. On that note, I do want to point out too that spending time with your child and experiencing games, toys, activities, even if they literally play with pens and line them all up, it doesn't matter what it is. You engaging with them and talking with them is the best thing for their learning. The best thing. And if you want to get in TV shows and things, anything with a real life person is the best opportunity for your child to learn, but it does not ever, ever, ever replace you. You are the most important and you have the most impact. Oh, okay. We have two more to go. Still with me? Hanging in there? All right, let's do this. Okay, repetition. Repeat, 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 repeat. I want you to literally parrot yourself or your child all day long if you can. Oh my gosh, as much as you can. Repetition, repetition, repetition. It matters. Whether your child is working on sounds or working on language, like actual vocabulary and learning words, repeating yourself is important. They need to hear it 20 more times plus than you do in order to learn a new word. Think about vocabulary, and somebody says this crazy cool word that you've never heard before and you don't know what it means. How many times do you have to hear it in context before you learn what it means to be confident enough to say it? Think about that. For some people, it'll be pretty quick. For some others, it'll be pretty long. It's the same for your kids. Some kids literally need to hear things hundreds of times before they try to say it themselves. Others, maybe once or twice. And honestly, it depends on what stage of development they are at regarding their language. If they are in a language explosion period, which happens, um, they might need a little less repetition before they imitate you. If they have never said a word or only have one or two words in their pocket right now, they're probably going to need to hear it a lot of times. A lot of times. So, One thing you can do here is I like to use the rule of three. So anytime I say a word that I want a child to learn or that is our focus or target word at the time, I am saying it 3 times. So if it is ball and we are playing with a ball, I am saying ball, ball, ball. Literally be obnoxious. So obnoxious. I want you to be in their face about it, making it fun. If they get frustrated with you, then they might be a little bit too old for that and you can turn it down a notch. You do not need to be talking to them like they're 1 when they are 5. But if they have a lower level of vocabulary and you're trying to increase it, or if they are struggling with a certain sound and you're trying to increase their accuracy with it, you need to repeat yourself as much as you can and as much as you will tolerate. So rule of three, rule of three, rule of three. Use it. Everything you say 3 times. Alrighty. Tip number 6 or number 5. I guess I'm giving you guys kind of a bonus tip here, but the +1 rule. When your child starts saying one word, you add one word to it. If your child says ball, you say go ball or purple ball. You describe the ball, you give it a preposition, ball on. I don't care what order. I don't care if you put your word first and their word second or whatever. You add a word to what they say. That expands their language, that expands their understanding and teaches them you can say this too. You just said ball. You could have said ball on because you put it on the table, and that's appropriate. So you want to keep it positive, keep it happy for them, but ball on. Go ball. I took you one step further there. But +1 rule. If your child says one word, you add a word to it. If your child says 2 words, you add a word to it. So they have 3. If your child says a 3-word phrase, you add a word to it and now they have 4. You don't have to do this every single time they say something. But as much as you can, it's really, really helpful. It's a great trick. It's a great rule to implement and to try to get yourself used to. So, one thing to do with this too is if your child is not saying words yet, you can do this with their sounds. So, if your child says, ah, then guess what you do? You add, oh, you add a sound to that sound. So, if they said, ah, I go up to them and I go, ma, ma, and I say it, ma, 3 times. Rule of 3. But add one. So instead of adding a word, because they're not at that word level, I'm adding a consonant. If your child is saying vowel sounds, add a consonant to the beginning or end of it, even if it's not a word. Ma, I guess could be mama, but it's not a word. It doesn't matter. I'm trying to expand their language, expand their use of consonants, expand their vocalizations, or the things that are coming out of their mouth. If your child is saying ma, you can add a syllable to it. Ma, 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 ma. Or you add again, add a consonant. They say ma, you say mom, mom. I'm doing visual cues. That's what I'm doing right here. That is also another trick and another tip that is on the handout and is also a bonus tip for you guys. You guys are just getting lucky today. Um, but I bring attention to my mouth in any way that I can, and a lot of the times that means touching my mouth and showing them how my lips look or my tongue looks while I make that sound. But back to the regular programming, I want them to imitate or I want them to be exposed to that much repetition of a +1 sound if it's not a word. That can be really, really helpful. If your child is babbling ba 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 ba, you can do the +1 rule by adding a syllable or adding a consonant to make it a word. So they're going ba ba ba, I say ba t ba t ba t. It doesn't have to be contextual or applicable to what's going on in their life at the moment. It's just seeing if you can get them to get another sound to come out of their mouth. And that is growth, people. That is growth. Alrighty. So with that, we are summing up our 5 tips. I hope that that was super helpful for you. I really want you to know that there's so much more I can teach you. This is just a little bit of an intro into what speech language therapists do, what we do when we come to your homes or when your child comes to see us. All of those things are likely going on at the exact same time, even though you might not even see them. Um, but there's so many other things that we look for and that we teach and that we practice while we're with your child. And there's a lot more that I can teach you. So, this being said, I would highly encourage you to try one of those tips a day or one of those tips at a time and try to get used to them until you feel confident doing them. Once you feel confident doing them, do them again with an additional one. So take the modeling and add a narration to it. And then take the narrating and now start repeating everything you're saying too. All of those things are really important, and the more that you practice them, the more they'll get comfortable for you. Trust me, at first, sometimes it's really hard. Some people pick it up like it's nothing, but a lot of people have a really hard time with this, and it is difficult to change the way that you talk to your child when you're so used to talking to them like they're almost an adult or like they're a little baby. Okay, so if you want more of this, I have more for you, and I would love to see you be a part of my course. Alrighty, guys, we are about done. If you want more information, I would love to see you join my course and be involved within our little community of parents working on this with their children. It is so, so great, and it's so great to have a team that supports you while you go through this. So, my course is honestly, it is filled with over 5 hours of content, 5 hours of information and tips and progress for you. We go over basic milestones for your child on top of what the 10th percentile is that you will see um, generally posted everywhere. I go over basic averages for you. I also go over what it takes to notice when a child might be likely to have a disorder or when you should really consider going to a speech language pathologist and how to differentiate the two. And we also do talk about the 11 prerequisite skills that are all, and they're all explained within the course as well. And there's examples as to how to do them with your child and how to practice them. All of that and more is packaged into one thing. And by purchasing this, you now have a little bit of a discount to get that course. And by being a purchaser of this masterclass, you have a little bit of a heads up in the program, but you also are missing out on a lot of really great information that you can help get your child started with. And it really only takes a couple minutes a day, people. Really only does. But through the course, I will directly coach you on all of these methods plus way more and how to do them specifically with your child and how to practice them in a way that you feel comfortable. It'll be brought down to an easier level to imitate me, and to be able to do with your child over time. I would absolutely love to see you as a part of this with us, and I'm so grateful that you were here today. So, thanks for checking it out, and we will be in touch. I hope to see you around, and make sure you, if you liked this training, please leave me a review. Please let me know what you thought. Please send me an email. It is Courtney.Speech THX for therapy, which is the abbreviation of therapy, at gmail.com. I would love to hear from you. And don't be a stranger. You can find me on Instagram, on YouTube, and on TikTok. And hopefully, well, you can also find me technically on, well, you can also technically find me on Clapper as well. And hopefully on many other social medias as they come about. But I would love to have you as a friend on any of them if you are interested and if you like my content. And please feel free to always leave me comments, send me a message, let me know what you like, what you dislike, what you want more of. I'm here to learn with you, and I'm doing this for you guys. So let me know how I can best help you. And I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope this was helpful for you. Thank you so much for being here. This is Courtney.Speech signing off. Love y'all. Bye. Oh my goodness, and I nearly forgot something. But I do want you to know that there are a lot of skills that a child needs in order to learn to speak and talk and communicate language, whether that is with their voice or with their hands or with an AAC device. There's a lot of things here. So, something you need to know is that there are 11 skills, like I talked about and I do have a series on this, and it is also talked about in my big course, but I do want you to know a couple of them. If your child is not imitating you, they are not going to imitate your speech. What this looks like is that they need to imitate you and actions first. So, do they imitate when you clap? Do they imitate when you pat your head? Do they imitate you pretending to sneeze? Anything, whether it's fun, silly. Do they imitate you picking your nose up, making silly faces? All of those things are important. They need to imitate actions, and they need to imitate actions with objects. This also usually is then brought into they need to imitate any sort of sound you make, and then it becomes speech or language. But that is just one of the many skills that your child needs to have before they talk. So if you try these things out and they don't seem to work for you, and you try them and you do them and you practice them a couple times a week at the least, and you do not see progress in your child, do they have these skills? They need to have those 11 skills before, and they need to be doing them regularly before they are getting ready to communicate and talk. After that, if your child is not talking still, there is a sign of that is a sign that something else could be going on. Another sign that something else can be going on is that if your child regresses, so they had a lot of words and then they start to lose them. That is not typical. That is not something that you should see. So if you do notice that in your child, it is something to bring up to your doctor right away, and please do not allow yourself to be dismissed by it. Because I wish I could say every doctor was great or every speech language pathologist was great, but unfortunately that's just not the case. It's not the world we live in. But if you are ever feeling like something is wrong, you trust your gut. Most of the time, if not all the time, parents are right, and way more right than doctors or specialists or experts can be. So keep that in mind. If your child is not doing any of those skills, starts to regress, or after a while you do not start to see progress in them in the ways that you hoped, I would encourage you to look into early intervention or look into private speech therapy. However you do it, it does not matter, but I would encourage you to get a second opinion, and a second opinion to your own or to professionals that you've already seen, and get them evaluated to see if there's something else that you're missing. There are also things that could contribute to why your child is not talking that are a little bit more medical and or oral motor, and that it's how their mouth moves and their ability to move it, or how their brain passes the signal to their brain. All of those things can impact the way that your child learns language or is beginning to talk, as well as developmental disorders or things that your child could have been born with, such as like Down syndrome, autism, cerebral palsy, lots of things. And a lot of these things you would notice, but some you might not until a later age. But it is things to keep in mind and to educate yourself on if you're at all nervous. And please know that I am not here to scare you. I am here to give you the cold hard facts and give you as much information that I possibly can in as short of a time span that I can. And I am only one person. I am a human. I make mistakes, but I try to be as evidence-based and as backed up by the research and the most updated research as I can be. But please note that I am still learning, and I will always be learning my entire life. And if there's any professional that says to you that they aren't, that is hooey. You should always be learning if you are in a medical field, in my opinion. Though, so if you ever notice anything that you think I could improve on, I would love to hear it from you. But I just wanted to make sure that you had those 2 bits of information too as we move forward. But I wish you all the best, and thank you again for being here.